morning and welcome to the Friday, August 12th, 2022 edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. President Joe Biden sat behind a desk at the White House this week where he signed into law the PACT Act, legislation that expands health care benefits for veterans who develop illnesses because of exposure to toxic substances at U.S. military bases. He said this new law matters. It matters a lot, he said. What a turnaround for the president who has faced unrelenting criticism because of high gas prices, inflation, and his low approval ratings. But without much fanfare, Biden has built a track record that has gone almost overlooked. Some are even suggesting that if he continues the string of success he has enjoyed in getting his mandate through Congress, historians might revisit Biden's presidency as one of the most consequential in American history. Despite Republican leadership vowing to do all they can to stunt Biden's agenda, the president has pushed through game-changing legislation like the PACT Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, the American Rescue Plan, and the CHIPS and Science Act. He's displayed steady hands in returning affordability to gas prices. He succeeded in expanding NATO, and monthly job reports continue to show increases. Of course, the biggest piece of legislation of late is the Inflation Reduction Act, which the House is expected to pass today following the bill's passage in the Senate. What's in the bill? What's not in the bill? And will it be enough for Democrats in about 3 months when the midterm elections take place? We will discuss all of that with political director of the National Democratic Training Committee, Anthony Davis. But first, let's bring on James Wright of the Washington Informer as we bring you a couple of brief headlines to kick off your Friday. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Stacey. Good to be with you.
Good to see you, James. As always, Attorney General Merrick Garland yesterday afternoon spoke for the first time since FBI agents raided former President Donald Trump's estate in Palm Beach, Florida, citing the, quote, substantial public interest in this matter. The Attorney General said the government had filed a motion to unseal the warrant authorizing this past Monday's search, which Trump has sharply criticized as a partisan attack. It was not immediately clear, James, how quickly the judge in the case may release the warrant, and federal prosecutors noted that if their request filed on Thursday, that it should be granted only absent objection by the former president. Now, James, late last night, the president's lawyers said, go ahead and unseal it. They've given their approval to unseal this. What are we expecting to find, James?
Well, we are going to find out some things that we probably should not want to know in terms of the activities of our former president, and not just in terms of January the 6th, Stacey, but some other things in his commingling with the white ultra-right. And this is not going to be good for them. I think this is a great development. I think it's a great development. I'm happy the Attorney General did step forward and address this issue as he should have, because when you're dealing with a former president, you're dealing in some dicey areas of national security, et cetera. And so that's why I'm glad that General Merrick Garland did what he did.
Well, reports early this morning suggest that there are some nuclear documents, classified nuclear documents that the FBI retrieved from the former president's house. These are so far unsubstantiated reports, but it remains to be seen what comes of that. Also this morning, James, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention updated its COVID-19 community and school guidance guidelines on Thursday, loosening several key recommendations. People who are exposed to the virus no longer need to quarantine at home, regardless of their vaccination status, although they should wear a mask for 10 days and get tested for the virus on day 5, according to the new guidelines. Routine surveillance testing of people without symptoms is no longer recommended in most settings, the CDC said. People who test positive for the virus should still isolate at home for at least 5 days, and the guidelines around masking, which recommend that people wear masks indoors in places where community COVID-19 levels are high, have not changed. The changes signal a new phase of the pandemic, according to the CDC. So, James, these changes What do you think about these changes? We're still in the pandemic.
We are still in a pandemic. And it's like Dr. LaQuandra S. Nesbitt, who was the former health director in DC, once said, we're living in a COVID world. And I think that our country is beginning to adjust to that. And the fact that we're seeing the loosening of these requirements shows that the American people are adjusting to the new world that we live in. Look, nobody anticipated this 3 or 4 years ago, but we've had to make a quick pivot. We've done it very well. And so the fact that we won't have to social distance the way we had to used to and wear a mask all the time outside and inside, those are significant victories. And I do have to credit the administration for really keeping its pedal on the metal in terms of fighting this disease. I really have to credit them for that.
Greta Masadi of the CDC says, we know that COVID-19 is here to stay. She says high levels of population immunity due to vaccination and previous infection and the many tools that we have available to protect people from severe illnesses and death have put us in a different place. The new guidelines are geared toward protecting people from severe illnesses, she said. So CDC has emphasized that they've emphasized, James, the importance of vaccination and other measures, including antiviral treatments and ventilation. So we're going to continue to watch this COVID develop. Of course, there's monkeypox. James, there's always something going on.
Oh, yes. Oh,
well,
yes.
There's been a lot of victories from this administration, and it's been a lot of it has been unsung, especially of late. And now the Inflation Reduction Act, James, is headed to the House today for final vote before going to the president's desk. No one is expecting any changes to be made by the House. It is expected the House, Nancy Pelosi, will be able to keep her caucus intact, and they will vote like the Senate and along party lines to keep this bill and send it to the president's desk perhaps as early as Monday for signage. So joining us now is the Democratic Strategist and Political Director of the National Democratic Training Committee, Anthony Robinson. Good morning, Anthony.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me. Great to be back again.
It is great to have you back. Listen, Anthony, first and foremost, this latest win by the president getting the Inflation Reduction Bill, the PACT Act, and the CHIPS and Science Bill through have been tremendous accomplishments. Is it enough, though, to have turned the tide? Because up until recently, we've been hearing how it just looks bleak in November. So is this enough to keep Democrats in control of Congress after the midterms?
Well, I will say this, there's always more that can be done, but I think that this is a strong tide turning or shift, because probably last time I was with you, we were probably expecting there to be a completely red wave. Like people had kind of counted Democrats out. Hell, maybe even some Democrats had counted themselves out and were looking ahead to like whatever the next cycle was. But I think this is a great example with the wins that have happened. And just let me just say that as a Marine Corps veteran and the PACT Act being, because I know many of my sisters and brothers in arms during the time that I served were impacted by burn pits and other health elements. So this is very big and people being treated, because a lot of times during the time that I served, when a lot of people were during the Desert Storm and Gulf War, people had identified what was going on. So people were leaving service just thinking, hey, it's just a cough, or hey, like this is just something I can walk off. So this is great. So let me say that. But these string of wins for the president, I think, are helping to turn the tide. We're seeing a slight bump in his approval ratings and a decrease in his disapproval ratings. But all in all, I think this is a sign that the Democrats are showing that slow and steady is the way, and we're here to deliver on what we campaigned on. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's not about making empty promises. It's about actually legislating and getting to the heart of what Americans need.
Yeah, Anthony, you are into strategy. You know about being a strategist, what they do, what you guys do, what everyone does in a position like yours and others, right?
Right.
So when you put all these bills together, when you put all these wins together, and we see in gas prices drop tremendously, how do you now strategize? What is a message you want out there, I should say?
Well, the one key thing and one thing in my line of work at the National Democratic Training Committee, what we're telling leaders up and down the ballot across the board is that you have to connect with the voters where they are, and you have to hit on the wins. Messaging for Democrats historically has been troubling. We have to get out there. There ought to be a strategy, a 50-state strategy to send leaders, surrogates, anyone at every level should be out there telling the people how these bills are going to impact their lives directly. And it's not going to be in the numbers. Like I think maybe for us, the numbers are exciting to us, those of us that are in DC are involved in politics, but it's going to be really about connecting with the people where they are. What's going to be important for someone that's in South Carolina versus someone that's in New York, or someone that's in the Midwest versus someone that's in the Deep South. It's going to be about messaging, hitting home what is important to the people. And I think that specifically with the Inflation Reduction Act, with what it touches on with the drug prices, is going to be something that's going to be especially important for marginalized communities, the people that have had to make their decision between paying for prescription drugs or paying for rent or paying for gas and other things. So it's going to be very important. And that's what we're telling our leaders up and down the board at NDTC, whether it's candidates, local leaders, or even campaign staff. They're going to have to meet people where they are.
And it is, going along those lines, it's well documented that low income Black and brown communities are impacted the most by the negative effects of pollution and climate change. For instance, asthma rates are 36% higher among African Americans, as they are more likely to live in areas with a greater air pollution and fewer trees. They also have lower incomes, leaving them more vulnerable to extreme weather events. So this bill, this Inflation Reduction Bill that everyone is excited about, as you noted, you talked about the numbers. How does this bill change that?
Well, a couple of things. I want to highlight that it touches on everyone across generations, because if it's prescription drug prices or Medicare for an older generation, we're talking about the future with climate change and making sure that people that our generation has clean air to breathe and can live in environments where because of climate change that their health is not going to be impacted. So it touches across the board, but I do want to highlight that affordable care, access to health care is going to be important. It impacts that. Climate change and also energy security as well. Dropping energy prices is going to be very important, because even we were looking at something like we often talk about affordable housing. That's great. But if you can't keep the heat on, the air conditioner on during the summer, and the prices are going to the roof, it kind of cancels out. So we're looking at grid security. All those things are going to be very important. Looking at alternative energy sources are going to be very important. For those people who haven't quite gotten their leg up with getting a secure job and need that health care, that might be in that generational, millennial or the next generation down area, you're going to have access and be able to, if you fall and bump your head, you're going to be able to, get treated. So all those things are going to be very important. So it touches on those things. And I think the thing that Democrats are going to have to communicate, that again, it's not just one segment of the population that's going to be impacted. This is generational. We're talking about the present, and we're talking about the future.
Yeah, I'm going to bring James right into the conversation. James?
Stacey, I had a chance to look at this bill, and let me just say that I think there were some great things in it, but overall, I really don't like the bill.
Oh, okay.
And let me tell you why I don't like the bill. First of all, I don't like this legislation where you bring all these different topics into just one piece of legislation. I wish if the Congress wants to address climate change, do it in one bill. If they want to address inflation, do it in a bill. If they want to deal with prescription drugs, they need to do it in one bill. But just throwing everything together in one piece of legislation, I just don't like that. I don't think that's good governance, because I don't think it helps in terms of the implementation of what the legislation wants, and in terms of defining what it needs to define. Another problem I have with it is in terms of the Affordable Care Act. It extends it for about 3 more years in terms of the subsidies. I would like to see Medicare for all. So instead of just having the Affordable Care Act, which has done great things, trust me, it has. Uh, we just need to have Medicare for all, and we just need to go for that and just keep that. I wish it would have had Medicare for all. Then you have this corporate tax, minimum corporate tax. Now, I know a lot of people say, yeah, let the big corporations pay their share, and they should, and they definitely should, especially those centibillionaires such as Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, excuse me. However, when you're talking about taxing people who make over $400,000, what does that mean? What about somebody who lives in Washington, D.C.? That doesn't mean the same thing as opposed to a person who earns $400,000 who lives in D.C. and in your hometown of New York City, as opposed to somebody who earns $400,000 in, let's say, in Birmingham. So the taxes are going to be different. And then since we're talking about D.C. and New York, which have state income tax, and I think in your situation, a city income tax, what about my home state of Texas that does not have a state or a city income tax? So it's an imbalance. I just didn't like the bill, but I'm glad that a lot of people are happy with it. I just didn't like it.
Well, Anthony, I want you to respond to James. I know that there are others who feel the way James does as well.
Yeah, I think that one thing to consider is, nobody really wants to know how the sausage is made. Like this is in this age, like this is governance. This is how it's done. You have to piece it together, and considering how obstructive Republicans have been, and even Democrats not even really being able to get on their appearance and not be able to get on the same page. I think that this is historic, and I think that to the ends that James has talked about, that yes, it would be great if you could do all these things individually, but I like to harken back to one of the reasons that the work that I'm in with training candidates and long-term investment. If we're able to elect more Democrats and build this long-term bench, that you can build on these things in the future. But we know Republicans are going to be obstructive, and if they turn the tide in November, all this could be for naught. So James, it could be you say you're not getting all that you want. You could have nothing, if we're not putting people in place to support the president's agenda, and again to even look at how this will be implemented at not just the federal level, but at the state and local level. That's important too. So we need mayors, we need city councilmen, we need judges, we need all these things to be in place. But I still think that it's very critical, and I think that it's connecting to the problems that people are facing right now. I thought about last night as I was preparing for the show. The people that put the Joe Biden did it stickers on the gas pumps, they're going to look real crazy when the price is going down in those bumpers. So if it says Joe Biden did it, it's going to connect it to lower gas prices. So I'll take that.
Wow, that's a strategist for you. We're talking with Anthony Robinson, the political director of the National Democratic Training Committee. Anthony, also, some analysts say the bill will raise drug costs, I guess, to a little bit to James's point, and health premiums for 220 million privately insured Americans. That could be problematic come the midterms as well. How does a Democrat convince constituents to vote for him or her after supporting this measure?
So again, I think it's about just connecting with the stories and the emotions, kind of separating from the news cycle, because the 24-hour news cycle, it could have you thinking that, hey, I want apples today and oranges tomorrow, but there are going to be some constants, and it's going to be about what is continually happening right now. To James' point, I would have liked to have seen that cap on the price of insulin. I think that's going to be that might have been a miss, but you know what? Still being able to look at drug costs overall and lowering down, and be able to negotiate the prices, and be able to not let big pharma dictate, whether I can take a medicine or not, that I really need, is going to be very helpful. So again, I think it's going to be important just to connect with what's happening right now, and again, could contrast that to that it could be nothing if the other side comes to place, because I think the Republicans have shown time and time again they're not interested in legislating. They're looking at bumper stickers. They're looking at conspiracy theories. They're not looking at trying to improve your life. They're trying to scare you. And that's not what the Democrats should be trying to do. They should be trying to connect with real emotions, with real people. So that's the big difference.
Yeah. And yeah, I hear you on that, Anthony. And this part too is part of a Joe Manchin compromise, right? The bill includes significant provisions for the fossil fuel industry and funding for controversial technologies such as carbon removal. Those provisions, which include opening up more federal land and waters to oil and gas drilling, and a commitment from Democratic Senate leadership to streamline the permitting process for energy infrastructure projects, including fossil fuel pipelines, apparently were included because of Joe Manchin. Why was it worth that kind of compromise?
Well, compromise is always going to be important. I can't sit here and say that I can get into the mind of Joe Manchin at all, but compromise is important. I think this is big, but I also think that expanding the Senate will be key in, not just one voice being heard as well, but it was needed. And I think that, honestly, I think that Manchin saw that the Republicans were not going to fulfill his dream of crossing over the aisle. And I think he said it in a report, I believe in the Atlantic, where he said, I tried to do it. Regardless of what amendments they were going to add, it was not going to change what we were trying to accomplish writ large. And so I made the decision to advance this legislation now. So hopefully his eyes have opened, but I think it was important to get him to this place. And again, if we expand the Senate or keep the Senate, then these are things that we can continue to work on. And I really think when it comes to energy, it's about the future. It's about the future and future generations and what's sustainable. We know there's only so much fossil fuel, left. Like that's not up for debate. That's not Anthony, creating some type of talking point. That's just a fact. And so we have to be looking at the future. So yeah. I'm glad that we got him on board, but hopefully his eyes have been opened that dream of having the kumbaya moment. It's not going to happen. Not with the Republicans that are in place now.
Yeah, I think James has a point he wants to make on energy, and then we want to get back to, as people say, what's in it for me?
Yeah, let me just make this a point real quick. One of the things I was concerned about the climate portions, the energy portions of this, is because it'll fall into the tree huggers. See, we're not in the time of Teddy Roosevelt when you had all of this vast federal land that nobody was really, dealing with. That land has some oil and it has some very valuable minerals. And I'm not saying that you should just put, oil derricks on Yellowstone National Park. I'm not saying that, but I think that it is reasonable that if there's federal land and it has a measurable amount of oil or types of energy that our country needs, it should be a reasonable discussion and a reasonable action that we should be able to drill on that. I know some people don't like that, particularly the tree huggers.
Okay, I think we lost some volume here from you, James. Anthony, are you hearing him pretty good?
I caught the last piece of him. I can still see him though.
Okay. Well, did you catch any of his question? Was it a question in there, James?
No. I was just making a point about the tree huggers. I just think that there's nothing wrong with looking at drilling on federal lands if it can bring out some more energy.
Yeah. So Anthony, going back to the what's in it for me, there's one think tank that mentions, now this is a $700 billion bill plus, and they found that, in their words, quote unquote, just $47.5 billion in the bill is considered beneficial for low income families and communities of color. Can you speak to that and how that could factor in if that's true, how it could factor in during the midterms, because we know that the strongest voter base for Democrats have been Black voters.
Yeah. So I don't consider, I have policy experience. This isn't necessarily my policy area, so I'm not going to try to do that. But from a strategy lens and from the Democratic angle, is that the numbers I don't think are really going to matter in the end. Again, I think it's about that connection. It's going to be about Americans knowing that under the Affordable Care Act, their healthcare premiums are going to be lower. It's going to be about tackling climate change. It's going to be about lowering the deficit and lowering costs for regular families. I think that's the piece. I think that the number piece, I have been a policy wonk, and numbers do excite me. I like data, but again, I don't consider myself the average everyday voter as well. And again, I think it's going to be about where people are right now, the messaging, connecting that, and what that leads up to November. We're still a long ways away from it. It's only a couple of months away, but it's still a long way away. I think we're under 100 days now, or right at that mark. And so it's just going to be about connecting with the emotion that's really connected. I honestly, I don't think that the numbers, and that's where Democrats have fallen and kind of gone down the rabbit hole sometimes. They try to bring a white paper or facts, and I'll even say common sense. I like common sense, but that's not really what's generating the people, the average voters. It's the emotions. And so we got to stop bringing the white papers to a conversation that's about what's being put on the dinner table. How am I going to get my the education of my child, or the or healthcare. So I don't think the numbers are going to matter so much as connecting with the emotions.
Yeah, real quick, Paris Brown of the Baltimore Times writes in that inclusive legislation is a strategy to getting things done on the Hill. Amendments to legislation in markup. It is a legislative strategy. James, what do you like about the bill? We've heard what you don't like. Is there something you like about the bill?
Oh, I definitely like it in terms of the prescription drugs, in terms of people being able to, insulin being more affordable. That is definitely a major win. And that's something that, going along with what Anthony was saying, when the Democrats go out into these districts, into these states, they should talk about that. They should talk about the fact that you can get your prescription drugs a lot cheaper because of this bill. They can even talk about the extension of the Affordable Care Act. And those are definitely wins. Like I said, I think it should be Medicare for all, but I will take those 3 years of subsidies in terms of the Affordable Care Act. But let me clarify my point. What I do like about the facts is I do like their additional taxes on people who make $400,000 or more, or the corporations. I just believe it should be the IRS needs to do a better job of assessing those people, those taxes. But what I'm afraid of is that you're going to have these loopholes that come out of nowhere, and then they won't be able, the money won't make it into the treasury. It's not a bill, like you're saying, Stacey, that I would prefer, but I can live with it.
All right, as long as you can live with it, James. Anthony, before we let you go, we've been addressing the midterms, and for some in the Democratic Party, the electoral map is a difficult one amid conflicting economic indicators and mixed opinion polling on their majority and the president's popularity. So it's still with all these wins, it's still a tough road ahead, right? And how would you describe their position at the moment headed into the midterms? Is there a path that you can foresee mapping out to victory for Democrats to at least maintain the split in the Senate and maintain the majority in the House?
I think now, let me just say that thank you for having me on again. I know if we're getting close to time, and I think the wins are important. The wins do matter, and I think it's about creating the narrative. I think that the ball is in motion, that the ball is in play. I think there are several, a couple of states that may have been more R than D, or they're probably toss up now, or maybe more D leaning now. But it's about creating this story, and like I said at the top of the show, It's about creating this narrative and gaining the wins. Slow and sure, the steady hand, I think, is the way. I mean, we're only halfway through the administration, and people are trying to act like like we've been through like 2 terms of just distress. Like let's cut that out. But it's up to us as Democrats to again tell the story. But I think that these wins count, and they'll continue to add up. I think there's more on the way. There's more that can be done. I think that if gas prices continue to go down, if we look at the House passing the IRA today, Inflation Reduction Act today, then these things will add up, and Republicans won't have the story to tell. And again, they will revert to what they've always done in the past, will be, scare tactics, pivoting away, and Democrats will need to be focused, be disciplined, tell the story that needs to be made, connect with emotions, forget the figures, and talk about what's impacting people right now. And again, it's not going to be a cookie cutter thing. It's not going to be a one size fits all. You have to talk to people where they are and what matters. The Florida message may be different than Rhode Island. It might be different than Mississippi or Alabama. So you got to meet people where they are. There has to be a 50-state strategy. And again, and let people know that if you like these wins, the other side is not going to expand on this. And so we have to have more people elected to make this happen and make this work for you.
Anthony makes it sound so easy. I guess that's why he is the political director of the National Democratic Training Committee. Anthony Robinson, we really appreciate your insights. We know you're not the expert, but you are. Your thing is more strategy and training, and we appreciate hearing some insights on strategy and training within the Democratic Training Committee. Thanks so much, Anthony.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks, James. And thank you all for joining Let It Be Known. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you Monday. We have a very special guest on Monday. The great, legendary Isaiah Thomas will join us here Monday morning on Let It Be Known Live.